intrinsic, and not so much clear up things, but kind of make sense of it. And I want you to try and understand it rather than try and just remember it as always. And then we'll move on to pharmacological drugs that affect, that's hence pharmacological, not narcotic. The drugs that you can take, and people do, when you have problems. On Wednesday, I'd like to go in the lab. How many of you have already done the mammalian dive reflex? Okay, Bailey? Can I see how many people have done that? So, mammalian dive reflex, you've done it.
Isn't it what we did in AMP?
Yeah, and record the data.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to do that. Do you want to still? Well, we could do it all again. We'll all do it. Okay, so Wednesday then, we'll go in the lab, and you need to work in groups of 3, and we'll do the mammalian dive reflex. And I'll give you a small assignment on that, because I have to give you some assignments. Sorry about that, if I have to do that.
Thank you.
And it'll be pretty much explaining what the neural activity is going on for the mammalian dive reflex. I'm telling you, that's pretty much the 5th cranial nerve. And then on Friday we'll continue on. And then hopefully the swimmers are back and we can get stuck in again. Big time. Okay? Right, so it's kind of a reminder to start with, but also as always, want to find out what you know and what you don't know. So let's get moving on. So I gave you a handout this morning, and on that page, the 2 things that I'm interested in is parasympathetic innovation and sympathetic innovation. We'll be starting with that. Now, I don't particularly like the word innovation when it comes to the heart, and that's just a personal thing. Can anybody kind of, and I want to get more discussion out of you if possible rather than a one-way delivery. So for me, I have a problem with innovation. What does innovation typically mean to you?
The nerve that connects to that thing.
And elicits a response.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's okay, but what's unique about the heart?
Can run without it.
It doesn't, it's autonomic, it's got automaticity. So therefore, when you use the word innovation to the heart, that suggests that you're going to get a response. Well, you do, but it's kind of only half needed. Does that make sense to you? However, you use, in neurology, you use the word innovation to mean to establish a response. Okay? So let's get cracking on. I would get myself a nice clean piece of paper, and I've tried to draw this diagram about 5 times, when I'm prepping. I can get it right, I just can't get the ratios all right. So give yourself a piece of paper. And if I was you, had some coloured pens, I'd get some different colours. Okay? Lindy, I assume that you can read extremely well. Would you like to read out what it says about parasympathetic innovation of the heart and slow it down sentence by sentence, please? Okay.
Parasympathetic innervation. The parasympathetic nerves supplying the heart branch off from the vagus nerves on both sides in the cervical region.
So let's stop you there. You guys, there is a left and a right vagus. Okay? Okay, keep going. Yeah.
These 3 ganglionic cardiac fibers on the right side pass primarily to the right atrium and are concentrated at the SA node.
Stop there. That's a really big deal, and we're going to do that in a moment. The parasympathetic is concentrated at the SA node. Huge amount. Okay, keep going, please, Linda. Thanks.
The AV node is reached chiefly by cardiac fibers from the left vagus nerve. Accordingly, the predominant effect of stimulation of the right vagus is on the heart rate, and that of left vagus stimulation is on atrioventricular conduction.
Okay, can I stop you there? Do you know the internodal conduction we talked about between the SA node and the AV node? Mm-hmm. Right, this is going to be responsible to the conduction speed. Okay, so it's called chromotropic in the conduction speed between the 2 nodes. Okay, keep going, please, Lynn.
The parasympathetic innervation of the ventricles is sparse, and its significance is in dispute.
Okay, that's very, very important as well. That the vagus has very little influence on the AV node. Okay, so where is most or nearly all of the innervation going to go to from the vagus? SA node, correct? Does it have an AV node connection? Yes, it does. But the focus of the parasympathetic is definitely on the SA node. So let's figure that one out. Okay, let me find out what you know and what you don't know, please. Magendi's law. Who knows Magendi's law? Shame on you, going to get a big stick. Somebody get it out. Look up Magendi's law. Come on, I want you to get involved in this class rather than me just deliver. Look up Magendi's law. What did Magendi's law tell us about afferent and efferent? Come on, Brooklyn. Magendi's law is very important to physiotherapists. You'll need to know this the rest of your life. It's the most important thing you'll ever learn in life. Yeah. What does Magendi's law tell us? Tells us that all afferent information enters the spinal cord. Let me down.
I saw it. What happened here?
MAG. Magendi.
Oh.
Go on.
Oh, that's what that is?
Magendi's law. What does it say?
That
Yeah.
anterior spinal nerve roots contain only motor fibers and posterior roots only sensory fibers, and that the nerve impulses are conducted in only one direction in each.
Correct. A simplified way of doing it. You can write this down. Magendi's law says that all afferent information enters via the dorsal horn. So Magendi's law, all afferent information enters via the dorsal horn, and therefore all efferent information leaves via the ventral horn. Okay? So that's what Magendi's law tells us. And so you've got a one-way flow from the central nervous system. So, God, it's been a while since I drew this. Good, not very good. And I know you're familiar with that, correct? That would be a cross-section, a terrible representation, but a cross-section of the central nervous system, correct? So according to Magendi, anything going afferently
Sorry.
comes in,
It's fine.
going to come into the dorsal horn, right? These are the dorsal horn, this is the ventral horn. Okay, we've got white matter and grey matter. And you guys are familiar with the fact that the ratio of white to grey matter changes as you go. Rostel or called. Okay, so we're looking here then at afferent information coming in, relays you get your interneuron. And this guy then would represent some form of central control. Okay, central control. So this would represent which nerve, because this is coming from the central nervous system, it's going to go to the heart. This will be your 10th cranial nerve, which is, you know, is your vagus, correct? Right. The vagus carries the parasympathetic innervation. Right? So that is going to go, it's going to draw it out fairly big. So SA node? Yep. AV node. How many tracks, please? 3. 2, 3, and then the intra-atrial. Go on, let's remind you then. What's this guy called? Whose bundle? Bachmann's bundle. This is the posterior or anterior. Which one is it? Posterior. That's Bachmann's posterior. This is the middle one.
Anterior.
Come on, how do you guys say it? Wait. Well done. And this one is my favourite. It's the anterior, which is tract of. Okay. And now what we need to understand is as well, we've got this going on. Let's just remind us. And that we looked at. Everybody go. So now then, let's look at the vagus, which is the parasympathetic innervation, and predominantly it's going to go from here to there, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Right. So we've got central control, meaning that it comes from the central nervous system and it's going to go predominantly to the SA node. Now, is there any parasympathetic? Yes, there is, but it goes, the parasympathetic does go to there, but it's fairly inconsequential. Everybody okay with that? What is a neurotransmitter? The neurotransmitter is cholinergic, correct?
Correct.
And therefore, what is the receptor type? Come on, Julie, you told me this the other day.
Muscarinic.
Well done. So that takes care of the parasympathetic innervation of the heart. So what does the parasympathetic do?
Put the brake on it.
Puts the brake on. Well done. And we therefore call it the vagal brake. So this is the vagal brake. That's B-R-A-K-E, right? Not B-R-E-A-K. Right, it's got a brake. It's going to slow things down. And therefore, your heart rate will be approximately 60 to 80 beats per minute at rest, correct? Okay, good. Now, this is what makes the sympathetic so different. I'm going to make it come out the other side only for ease of diagram. Right? Please don't do that. Remember I told you that it's not like one side is one. So for ease of the diagram, let's do the same. And you know that these preganglionic are short, and you know we said the other day they talk to each other, correct?
Mhm.
And you know these are long, and the interest we're interested in are the vessels. Okay? So now we've got the central nervous system will innervate the vessels sympathetically, correct? Okay? What type of receptor, or what is the receptor on the major vessels? Those are alpha-1 receptors on your arteries and your veins. Okay? So the adrenergic alpha-1 receptors. Right, now here's what goes on. And it has to make sense to you why it goes this way. There is very little or no central control over the heart sympathetically. So where does not central control, where does the sympathetic control come from? It doesn't come from the central, it comes from where? It comes from the actual vessels themselves and the ganglia. Okay, so now we get this going on. Oh, it's a different colour. Oh, no, can you use black? So the sympathetic innervation doesn't come central. It comes peripherally. Because it's monitoring and responding to what the heart is doing and makes changes. So this is going to go, you can go this way if you want to. This is going to go where? This is sympathetic.
To the SA.
Well, say again?
The SA node?
Well, we've got it does, but where is it going to go primarily? Because the primary is the SA node, is the parasympathetic. But the primary innervation from the sympathetic is not the SA node. Where is it?
We go to the other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The primary innervation on the sympathetic is to the AV node.
Okay.
Figure out why. So now, this is the primary to the AV node. Is there any connection to the SA node? Yes, there is, but it's not primary, it's totally secondary. Tell me why. If you try and remember it, you won't remember it, but you can figure out that's the only way it really can be. Why don't you need something that'll increase the heart rate at the SA node? You can get rid of the sympathetic to the SA node. Because what is that heart trying to do?
The pump.
Beat fast. It's trying to beat fast all of the time. But all of the time you're holding that fast beat down and the inotropic effect down all of the time. So you can get rid, if you want to, you can get rid of the sympathetic innervation, but why must it go to the AV node? Because, all right, let me ask you a question a different way round. Can you survive and function if your atria are not working? Yes. Figure out why, and come on, Lindy, figure it out. How can you do that? The reason I asked you to cut the heart up is because I want you to really get a feel of what that atria looked like. Okay? And where is it located? And does it have valves coming into the atria? Come on, think it through. Are there valves coming into the atria?
Into the atria.
Into the atria.
Not coming into.
There are no valves coming into the atria. Figure it out. So therefore, what is always happening to blood and the atria?
Just getting dumped in.
It's always going in. Every time a heart beats, ventricular-wise, the blood shoots around your body at the afterload, and it's constantly dumping blood into the atria. Makes sense on that? Right, now then, does the atria have to contract for the blood to go down into the down into the ventricles?
No, all it needs to do is open.
Correct. All that's got to happen is the valve has to open, i.e. the tricuspid or the bicuspid valve. That's all that has to happen. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, because which direction does the blood go? With gravity.
Yeah.
But what else happens when that mitral valve and tricuspid valve opens? What is the ventricle doing when the valves open? Say again?
So it's relaxing.
Not just relaxing, but it's getting bigger. And so what happens to the pressure? You've got a negative pressure gradient. What's it doing to the blood? It's sucking it in. So understand that the atria only there is kind of holding chambers. We call it the atrial kick. That's all the atria do, is they kind of go, okay, let's kick a bit more in. But you can function, not very well, but you can function sufficiently to be alive even if the atria are not functioning. Evidence? What's an atrial flutter? You've heard the expression. Is the atria contracting during an atrial flutter?
Yes, but not too strongly.
It's not, it's just trying to contract.
Yeah.
That's what it's fluttering. It's not contracting. It's going, oh, didn't make it. But you're still staying alive. So the point is that do you need to have something to make the SA node fire? No, you don't. But do you need to have something to make the AV node fire?
Yeah.
Of course you do, because what does the AV node do? Stimulates the ventricles to fire. Okay, I don't mind how you write that down, but your understanding has to be how and the only way that it can work. Make sense or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like when all of the nerves are like kind of like snipped, is that then hormonally like?
That's exactly right.
But hormonally, does it respond to the SA node, or is it just the?
It's humoral. It's humorally. Yeah, humoral. It's a complete risk. That's why I'm doing a heart transplant.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no nerves attached. And the irony about a heart transplant, if you've got no nerves attached, you can't feel a heart attack. Why not?
No nerves.
There's no nerves. I mean, if you take your nerve root out of your teeth, you don't know if you've got toothache. So one of the problems of having a problem, it's a big problem. You have a heart replacement, you have a heart attack and not, well, the only reason you know is because you've just died. That's the only reason. You don't feel any pain from your heart if it's not attached to any nerves, but you can survive, okay,
Mhm.
all right?
So it comes from the vessels and what other?
No, it just comes, oh, right, we're carrying on from that, right. You're asking that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said it, like the sympathetic control comes from the vessels, and then you said something
Yeah,
else.
what happens is the information to say control or rhythm doesn't come central, it comes from what the vessels are doing,
Gotcha.
okay? So the vessel will either constrict or relax. That difference in pressure will make the changes needed, yeah? The heart responds, remember, the heart doesn't prep you for something. The heart responds to what's going on. Make sense? So you've got to see it that way round. So if you need harder heartbeat or a faster heart, it's because the vessels are saying, hey, my blood pressure's too low. And so typically it comes from a peripheral source rather than a central source.
Gotcha.
Okay, good. So we've got this big deal. Now here's another cool thing. This is a really big deal. That guy. That's what the sympathetic also does. The sympathetic also has a direct innervation of the ventricles, and this is known as ventricular escape. So this guy is really important. What do we mean? And anybody heard the expression? What do we mean by ventricular escape? Figure it out. Think about it. What does that mean? Why would it be there? Good old Judy's looking it up. Why not? Why not look it up? You got knowledge at your fingertips. What is ventricular escape? And you really even don't need to look it up. You can figure it out. I know it's easier to do your Googles. Hang on, let's listen, because I want to hear what you're thinking. Go on.
I was just wondering if it's like because it skips the nodes and just goes straight to the ventricle.
So that,
So that
if the A, well done Bailey, if the AV node fails, guess what? We got a backup plan, that's ventricular escape. Good. Now, yep.
Does it only go to that one side?
No. It goes to, remember, and even if it did go to one side, it didn't matter because the conduction cells are just pop. Remember the action potential is vertical. So you've only got, throw a pebble in a pebble in a pond, it goes like that. Now then, what's the rate of ventricular escape? It's only there for survival. So we've got a natural rhythm of the heart. If we denervate is what? 100 to 120 beats per minute, correct?
Mm-hmm.
We've got the vagal brake that's going to keep you down at 60 to 80 beats per minute. Now then, let's get to a state where you've blocked both the SA node and AV node. We've got no input at all other than to the ventricles. What's ventricular natural rhythm on its own? You'll be surprised.
50?
Good guess, not quite. Not quite.
Lower?
It's only going to keep you alive just
30.
20 to 40 beats per minute. So ventricular escape is about 20 to 40 beats per minute. The reason there, it's just going to keep you alive.
So when people like train to lower their heart rate, are they only using that or
No, the
okay.
vagus parasympathetic.
Okay.
And so actually that's can sometimes be a problem.
Okay.
Like Shane Gould in late 80s had a 32 heart rate.
Wow.
But she got so much parasympathetic tone that it was difficult for her to pop her heart rate up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, really. Now then, here's what you need to understand as well, is that, look, the sympathetic is always firing. I would write that down somewhere. The sympathetic is always firing. But it's the extent of which it's firing is important. Can anybody suggest why is the sympathetic always firing? I mean, it's crazy that you've got the sympathetic firing to the SA node when the predominant influence is the parasympathetic. Let me say that again. You've got the parasympathetic, you've got the SA node, correct? Right? That's driven mostly by parasympathetic. But is there any sympathetic innervation going to it? Just a tiny amount. But one must dominate over the other.
Mm-hmm.
So at rest, which side of the autonomic dominates? At rest. Parasympathetic dominates at rest, but is there any sympathetic innervation? A tiny amount. Tell me why there has to be, not just to the heart, but why must you have sympathetic innervation all the time?
Wouldn't it be due to the molecules, since the catecholamines, since norepinephrine's mainly used and epinephrine's similar to that, wouldn't?
You've confused me completely.
Sorry.
I don't know. I can't quite follow your school of thought. Anybody explain that? Because I'm not very bright. Yeah. I'm not quite understanding what you're saying here.
I'm saying that there's like, epinephrine doesn't have a specific receptor. It's only norepinephrine.
Correct.
And then, epinephrine,
Oh,
if there's enough, would,
I see where you're headed. It's not actually the answer. You are actually right what you're saying.
Yeah.
In fact, we can actually look at how we make. In fact, that one might be a bad thing. Now, the question is, why must you always have some? It's called sympathetic tone.
Is it because of the vessels and always like the need to maintain pressure within the body?
That's the answer. Did everybody hear that? Go on, say it out again, please.
Because it's coming from the vessels and they always need like the pressure gradients to maintain.
Makes sense. You can't have constant vasodilation to keep your pressure up. You have to have what we call tone, so vascular tone, and that vascular tone is only because you've always got some form of tone in the vessels. If not, what would the vessels be doing all the time?
Everything
What-
would just be like,
And what happens to blood pressure?
Way down.
Let me find out what you know. How do you figure? I just like finding out what you know or you don't know. What is blood pressure? How do you calculate? How is blood pressure? What does it equal? Blood pressure equals total peripheral resistance times by cardiac output. Correct? And cardiac output is stroke volume times by heart rate. So that's how we arrive at that. You've got to have. Oh, you're laughing at. What? You are. I know, I can tell, you can see you then, I'm joking. So, yeah, you've got to have tone all the time in the vessels. If not, your blood pressure would be in the shocks. Yeah? I mean, it's really bad. Okay, so we do have both a sympathetic and a parasympathetic at the SA node. It's just that the SA node is driven predominantly by the parasympathetic. Yeah?
what kind of other things is tone important for?
Mostly for muscular tone. You must have muscular tone as well.
Otherwise you just drop.
Yeah, that's right. You do how does antagonistic? Oh, stop it, Brooklyn. I'm way more interested than your hair. It's okay. You can't be sorry for something you do on purpose. You were looking at your hair on purpose, weren't you? You were bored, weren't you?
No, I was just
No,
listening.
you were bored. I know
I
you
was
were.
listening.
You were bored. I think this is boredom. That's boredom.
I'm just
I'm
listening.
pulling his leg. I'm retiring, I'm having a great time. I'm just pulling his leg. I can beat my students up. It's something I wanted to do all my life. You're my last class. This is brilliant. I'm really glad you're in this class, Bailey, because I'm going to give you some crap later on as well. I'm just joking. Right, can we move on? Can we move on? Okay, so receptor types alpha 1, correct? And receptor types for the sympathetic to the heart. Hold up, beta 1. So beta 1's there, alpha 1's on the vessels, beta 1's there, muscular end. You okay with that? When you're trying to learn this, don't try and remember it. Try and understand it. Okay. So can we leave this diagram alone now? Can I erase it? Make sense? to you?
Yeah.
Okay. This one's already interesting. And I'll be honest, this kept me alive about a year ago. My heart rate dropped to 28 beats per minute. And when I was at 28 beats per minute, I went, oh shoot, I'm definitely on ventricular escape. It's not fun. Yeah.
What causes your body to resort to ventricular escape?
We're going to actually, that's a great question. We're going to do a couple of lessons on that. It's because the electrical properties up here get screwed up. So we're going to look at what happens and the predominant reasons why that happens. But that's a good question. It's because this has got screwed up. So nothing is going on particularly. It's all going on here just to keep you alive, yeah? That's a good question. And we will be looking at arrhythmias as part of the course. Okay, but if I do that now, we're going to miss out for a bit. You okay with that? Okay, let's move on. Let's make out a chart. Because you'll see where we're heading, because I want to move on to drugs as well.
Thanks, Mom, for being obsessed with straight.